morning, Mark. Thanks so much for coming on Business Owner Spotlight and joining us today. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell everybody a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it for.
Yeah, good morning, Scott. It's a pleasure to join you here this morning. Yeah, I would be the Chief Executive of Ulster Hockey, and I've been in place doing that role now for just over 3 years. So I've almost got used to what we're doing, a bit of an understanding of the business. I suppose on top of that, I've been working in the sports sector for around 20 years now. So it gives me a bit of a grounding for the role.
Fantastic. And you're a little different. Your organisation's a bit different to a lot of the guys we'd have on here. So explain who would your ideal customer be, or what would they look like?
Yeah, we're almost a service company. We are providing a service, but we don't have a customer that necessarily buys a tangible product from us, and we have a number of different partners. So sport in general is delivered in a sort of collaborative and partnership sort of approach. So really, in terms, if we look at who gives us the most money, our biggest customer would be Sport NI, in the sense of the sort of annual grants that they give us, which is a fairly significant proportion of our income. But then, we have other funding, we have sponsors, we have, members who come along, want to do coaching qualifications, some of the services, some of the development that we do. But really, for me, I think our best customer has to be our members and our clubs and our players. Yeah. Because the way I see it, if you take the Sport NI funding away, hockey will still continue. It'll look a lot different. If the sponsorships weren't there, the organisation would look a lot different, but hockey would still continue. If you took the clubs and the players away and the volunteers, we wouldn't have the sport, and it wouldn't. So I think the fact that they're essential to our very existence probably makes them our best customers.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. And what about the last couple of years then? What sort of impact has COVID had, and what sort of things have you had to put in place to deal with it?
Yeah, look, sitting probably in about March 2020, we were sort of panicking alongside just about every other sport in the sector, really asking how we were going to get through. And, depending on when your season was landing, different levels of concern. So we ended up having to curtail the season. The 1920 season caused us a little bit of grief. We were then quite lucky that some of our income generation, like the summer camps, was able to continue because restrictions have eased at that sort of given time. However, the following season, the 2021 season was completely gone. So that impacted on our ability to take membership fees. But luckily, that was offset by Sport NI being able to provide us with some sort of COVID recovery grants. Look, we've taken quite a few positives out of it. It really freed us up a little bit of time when we weren't doing as much delivery to really consider our strategy going forwards. And we spent a lot of time developing our sort of 2021 to 26 strategy, which was launched last year. But the other key actions, I think we informally always had a flexible working arrangement, because a lot of staff and the guys around doing delivery on the hockey pitches, if they were not in the office on a 9 to 5 basis. So we really formalised the structures. We improved the infrastructure in terms of our server, our access to files, and I think our flexible working policy and the infrastructure we've got in place to support that is just a lot better now. We hope we've come out the other side. We're planning ahead for a normal season this year without any impact. Last year, again, there was so many postponements with clubs and teams who were affected by positive COVID tests. Hopefully this year that's going to be reduced, and it just allows us to plan ahead. There was a lot of ad hoc stuff going on sort of last year. So hopefully back to some form of normality, touch wood.
Yeah, it's nearly 3 years later, some sort of normality. And, you mentioned there a bit of time out for, reflection and strategizing. Would you agree that a lot of organisations don't take that time, and it was only that was maybe forced on you to do it, that made you do it and take the time out?
No, I think it was always there, that we do have to have a very clear strategy, both in terms of, demonstrating to our funders what we're going to do and what we have in place. But also, in terms of reporting back to our members, this is what we've told you we'll do, and here's how we're doing against it. But I think we just got that extra, and just to do it a little bit better, So the end product in terms of the strategy we've got is more all-encompassing. We had a far better consultancy sort of process, really engaged with our clubs and members, who may not have been as available. Everybody was sitting in the house anyway. A few online meetings, people were more engaged and easier to speak to. So it certainly enhanced the process, which we would have had to have done. I think the end product sort of speaks volumes to the positives around that.
So you mentioned there you've been in the role for about 3 years. What would be the biggest learning you've had since you've been a business leader?
Yeah, I think you come in and you've got all sorts of ideas. You take a look at what needs to be done, and you can pick out about 10 things in any organisation that you think you can improve on. The strategy was one, the office environment was another, the way our staff and volunteer board linked together. So these are all things that needed looked at. In fact, even some of our legal structures. But I think, I thought, let's set about doing all of these things. You suddenly realise that things take longer than you expect. Nothing happens as quickly as you think it will. So, better planning and a little bit more patience is certainly required when you see the improvements you want to make, just knowing that it's going to take a bit longer than you would ideally hope.
And aside from COVID, then what would you say have been the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your business career?
Yeah, look, I think there's been a number. It's a strange business we work in, and we're very much tied in to the funding cycles. So there's always challenges around certain parts of the cycle where there's a little bit of uncertainty over what your funding is going to look like in the next number of years. And I suppose it's like navigating through that, keeping the staff settled, when, if they don't know the funding for their role is going to continue sort of beyond the end of March, we always have to ensure we've got a clear pathway to deal with those issues and keep the staff settled. That's always a sort of big challenge. And then, sport's one of those environments where people are passionate about it. And as you'll know yourself, when you're passionate about something, it's very difficult to change your opinions on certain aspects. So we do have to deal with people with a passion for the product that we are delivering and possibly a different viewpoint to what we are doing. So really, dealing with expectations and members is always going to be a challenge in our role. And, we know we can't keep everybody happy. If we can keep most people happy, and the ones who are not happy, we can justify it because we're doing the right thing. I suppose is very key. So it's all about people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see that theme coming through talking to you. So obviously you're heavily involved with sport then. So tell us, who would be the best coach you've ever had and why?
Yeah, interestingly, if I look back, the couple of guys that I always look at quite early in my career within the sports sector actually were coaches from a coaching perspective. I used to work in the Scottish Institute of Sport, and two of the programs I worked with were swimming and curling. And I learned different things from the sort of head coaches in both of those, not necessarily about the actual sport coaching, but about developing a program and how you get to achieve what you do. The swimming coach was a very abrasive character, American, abrasive, very focused and keen, to really deliver on swimming. And I used to have quite a difficult relationship with him. Until one day I went and met him by the swimming pool, and he was a completely different character. And at that point, I sort of took on board that, sometimes you have to change your approach to meeting people, meet them where they're comfortable, and take that forwards that way. And he always had this viewpoint of a sort of trench mentality, and he always wanted you to identify what was going to go wrong in a project. Knew how to deal with it if it did go wrong. So that two learnings that I've taken there. The second one was the curling coach, a gent called Mike Kay, who's now with the British Olympic Association. And he very much pushed the narrative of be as planned and prepared as you can be.
Yeah.
Make sure you've looked at every single detail ahead of rolling anything out, and try and build the best team you can around you. And I think seeing those two guys who are completely different, but operating, for the best interest of their program, there's a few learnings that I've carried and taken.
Two good ones, and they've served you well over the time, I'm sure.
They seem to have done, yes. And like I say, the first one was very negative, but sometimes that, taking a negative approach and knowing what could go wrong does kind of help, because, expect the worst and you're not going to be disappointed,
Absolutely.
Hopefully it doesn't work out as badly, and, you'll achieve what you need to a lot easier,
And what about quotes or sayings you've learned along the way? Any of those that stick out for you?
Yeah, an interesting one, when you spoke about process, and it's an old. I was always a judo man, so I had a real interest in Japanese culture at one time, and it led me to a guy called Confucius, and his favourite saying, or one of his famous sayings, was, the most important part of something is the part that isn't there. And if you think of that in a business context, and I can relate to this one, a few months ago, my administrator went to Singapore for 3 weeks to visit her daughter, and I felt like I'd lost a limb.
Yeah.
And the important thing that you take is when she wasn't there and operating within the small team, it was a big miss.
Yes.
Often roles like that are overlooked, and people think about the coaches as being essential, the development officers, but actually when you take any small part of the team out, you realise that the whole thing can be affected. So that's where I see a rollover from the most important part not being there.
That's really interesting.
My own experience.
Yeah, no, I can that resonates just now when you say it, absolutely. And what have you learned about yourself then along the way?
Yeah, look, I think you learn a lot. You have to learn from your mistakes, and I'm sure there's been plenty of those. But look, for me, I've learned that sometimes I need to be just more patient. On a positive sense, I've learned that I seem to be reasonably good at taking people along and building those relationships, and ensuring that we have a very collaborative approach. But certainly, you learn as you go along that as you realise things take longer, you have to be more patient. Sure. You learn where you have to be more structured. So there's I think every day has to be a learning. If ever you tell somebody you're good at something and you've got it cracked, chances are you haven't. So you always have to be aware that things can. You're always looking for improvements and learning every day.
Yeah, it's like the more you know, the more you have to do, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I suppose it's when you hear about people, the unknown knowns and the unknown unknowns. Hopefully, I'm at a place now where I, almost know what I don't know, and it's quite a lot. That's a better place to be than not knowing.
Of course, absolutely, totally agree. So look, just before we finish up, tell us, what does the future look like for you guys, and what do you see as the main challenges moving forward?
Yeah, look, we need to keep growing all the time. I would say within our sector, the GAA and football are on a completely different planet from us in terms of size, scale, and scope. Rugby are a massive organisation just in terms of having the professional game. So we're never going to close that gap in terms of income resource. But look, we want to grow as much as we can, and we want people to realise that hockey is here, and it's up there around the third or fourth biggest sport in the area. Look, there's a lot of challenges, changing habits, changing society, engaging in team sport. These things are all changing sort of constantly, so we have to be as sort of versatile as possible to change how we offer. At the moment, we're about to do a full review of the way we deliver our competitive hockey. We're doing it the same way as we have done for 50, 60, 70 years. So we need to think about sort of changing there. Yeah. The public purse is shrinking, and I think following the pandemic, we do have some challenges. Education and the health service have a real sort of emotional claim on the limited funds. So as a sports sector, we have to put our best foot forward to show what we can achieve to ensure we continue with that support. And we probably need to just get better at engaging with business and with the corporate world. So, for a long time, a lot of sports have been very reliant on that public and membership income. And there's only so far you can go with that. So we're looking very much at how we can start to engage with sponsors and corporate entities to really grow the organisation in a different direction, and and improve our financial sustainability. So a whole host of challenges organisationally and personally, I suppose, trying to navigate through that. So a lot to be doing.
But it all sounds really exciting and lots of opportunity there. So look, I wish you well with it. Really appreciate you coming on here. Enjoyed hearing about your story, and I'm sure the guys will too when we post it. So look, thanks again for joining us.
No problem at all. Been pleasure chatting to you.